Okay. I can move forward a little bit if you want to take up the back row. Would that be helpful?
That's it.
Okay.
Check out one way to support us. Of course, Mike Lindell he had his own truck there as we tried to cross into Canada a few weeks ago.
Just careful of the exposed wire.
It was unsuccessful due to a lot of the immigration policies that we got rejected. But you can do the same and basically contribute to what he's doing going on Also, go online, go to our website, rsdnetwork.com, rsdnetwork.com. We have resources that are all up-to-date program of what we have, not only show-wise, but also in terms of financial giving. You can donate right there on the website, rsdnetwork.com. But I really can't wait to hear the stories from the truckers that have several here today, because these individuals have really sacrificed a lot of their family time, a lot of their personal income to make their way from various places in the country, a lot of them in Southern California, off to Northern Virginia here. And really, you know, in fighting for various demands, in fighting for the freedom, it's all about freedom. Like I said, it's not an anti-vaccine, it's not an anti-mask, it is a pro-freedom movement. And that's exactly what they're doing. And of course, we've seen thousands and thousands of people join this convoy in the last couple of weeks as it picks up steam coming from the desert southwest, going up towards the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains, going to the Ohio River Valley, and going to Pennsylvania and here. And a lot of people just joining them on the way. Families, RVs, other trucks, regional truckers have made their way here, all in support of these truckers. It's just walking the route. The truckers are here right now.
Just filling some of these first two rows.
Everyone's situated. So we've got to start this thing off. We're so glad you're joining us. Now would be the time to absolutely share this story as we want to get these guys on this today.
Arizona. All right.
It's going to be like
Yes, sir. Actually, back to California.
so we'll be able to
I'm good. This is exciting. It's a big change. He's better than me. Oh, you're close.
So Thomas and I made a movie together called The Swamp. So we're on HBO.
before we get started.
HBO film crew followed us around every step we took this building during the year 2019. And it was to expose a lot of the corruption in Washington, about how a lot of the political donations resulted in changes to people's behavior here, and how they vote and who they're representing. Yeah, it happens in a very direct and explicit ways. So we made a movie about it, and you get to kind of see how, you know, committee chairmanships, bought and sold, leadership positions, traded for money. Assignments, lobbies, say, hey, you want something, I'll pay for you to get on, I'll pay the basically slide.
All in one period.
Oh, okay, what was it? Were you guys
Into this region, you're going to check in the processes and what it takes to do all that.
They've all braved the DC subways.
Oh my God.
Yes. You thought Beltway track. The DC subway system is whenever a staff member of ours is late to an appointment or work, they can always blame the DC subway system because it, on most days, is not.
Hey, Ford, how you doing?
Great.
We met before, right?
Perhaps. What was your name?
Juan Mendoza. I'm with the Daily Caller.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. I probably. Oh, you know what? I think I met you last year when they were like Matt Brainerd was they were down at the DC prison.
Yeah, I've been at like basically all green arts.
Yeah.
So yeah. If you were at that, then I definitely saw.
Yeah.
Cool.
Probably going to use their ridership. Really honored to have you.
Fuel prices, the price of oil, all this stuff affects truckers and the
You're back to May.
I think we have a few more folks. I've never done this.
Oh, dude, nice. They have signal here.
Sorry.
They have signal here, dude. 'Cause I was down at the other one with the Ted Cruz.
With Cruz, yeah.
Dude, and I could not get any reception down there.
Yeah, I actually didn't know about that one. I missed that.
Yeah.
I got this one from, I contacted Massie's office and Gaetz's office responded to me.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
Nice.
But
Yeah, because I was trying to meet, they were supposed to have one yesterday, because I got the hookup with Randy Weber's comms director, but their flights got delayed yesterday, so they had to cancel.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I made it all the way to Capitol Hill. I was here and they said it was canceled.
Yeah, I was with Anthony Cabasa and from American and Savannah Hernandez, and like we're all there ready, like, all right, let's do this. And then, but so you're always around like the DC area? Or?
Well, I live here in DC, but I do travel.
Okay.
You know, like a third of the time maybe.
Yeah, because I see your streams a lot, man. Like you do good work, man.
I try to be the C-SPAN of activism. Moments like this are like really fascinating, where they actually, you know, like true activists, like kind of meeting the centers of power.
Yeah,
It's kind of a rare occasion.
it is, man. Like it's amazing to see, man. Like I usually report on so I'm like essentially the border correspondent for the Daily Caller. So I'm literally down like in Texas or in Arizona.
Yeah.
So this is like a whole change of pace, man. I'm like
Did you work with Julio?
with Jorge. Well, I've worked with Julio Rosas too, but
Right, yeah.
I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not getting shot at in this job.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Congresswoman Greene will be here in a moment. Many of you know me. I'm Matt Gaetz from Florida. This is my colleague Thomas Massie from Kentucky, and all difficult transportation questions Thomas will be ready for as a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. If you have questions about the military or the judicial system, I'm on the services.
Just don't blame me for the roads.
That's right. Well, he drives on them. Thomas got here by automobile. I got here by aircraft, and that's because Thomas doesn't wear the masks on the aircraft. And so, how long was that drive to Kentucky?
So I haven't been on a plane since July, so I've shared the road with a lot of you. I wish I was paid by the mile for this job. I've been driving to and from DC since July.
Well,
It's about a 1,000-mile round trip.
I have great empathy for the staff that join you on those journeys, because I'm sure you create a lot of homework for them. We welcome you. We're glad you're here, and I want to let you know that your visit here is very timely, because in the next 48 hours, the Congress will consider the Appropriations Act that funds the government. And our colleague Chip Roy of Texas has laid out, really as a leading thinker on these issues, that we should not be voting to fund a government that is treating our people the way our people have been treated, particularly since the war. So Thomas and I have joined with several dozen other Republicans to say we're not voting for any government funding bill until these mandates are lifted. Right. And it is my concern and it is my expectation that we will not be on the winning end of that fight. If that vote were held right now, it would be all of the Democrats and probably a very healthy dose of Republicans voting to continue these funding measures. And we think that our country right now is at a crossroad. We're at an existential moment, and this is the time certainly to take a stand. We are pleased that the United States Senate has passed legislation to declare this emergency period concluded. We would hope the House would take up and pass that, but increasingly Thomas and I have noted that this really isn't about the virus, it is about control. And a lot of government entities have gotten control, and they don't want to give it up, even though the power comes from we the people. not the institutions of government that really, I think, have been engaged in a power grab over these several years. I was particularly pleased in Thomas's service when at the very beginning of all of this, he threw a flag on the Congress trying to devalue your dollar, accelerate these inflationary cycles without even showing up to work. Congress was set to pass a piece of legislation to spend trillions of dollars in exotic and new ways that we've never spent money before. And Thomas said, well, here's the thing. I'm going to use my job as a congressman to make sure if y'all are going to pass that, you at least have to show up to vote. And he got a lot of criticism for that, but you know what? He was right. And I think that if more folks here were actively engaged in the legislative process, looking at how these decisions affect us, we would actually tweeze through these bills. And so we're working now to get as many Republicans as possible to oppose this, they call it the omnibus spending. But anytime anything has a bus attached to it in Washington, it's usually not good. If it's an omnibus or a minibus, it usually is a way that a lot of these lobbyists and special interests have rolled their wishes into legislative action and have ignored wishes from the people. A final note on that, I was sharing with some of the folks that got here earlier. In 2019, Thomas and I were in a documentary film together about kind of the machinations of Washington that we found particularly corrupt. And it was the trading of money for votes and favors, often through political action committees and lobbyists. And when I went to Thomas, there's a scene in the movie where he explains to me rather sheepishly that he is the 438th ranked member in fundraising from political action committees. And I said, but Thomas, that's impossible. There's only 435 members. But what had I forgotten, my friend?
The non-voting delegates from Guam and Puerto Rico raised more money than me.
Yes, so if that tells you anything, we're here engaged in this battle. We're glad to have backup. Oftentimes, here, they think we're crazy, but we think they're crazy most of the time. And so it's good to be in a room full of folks who I think can bring some common sense and some good advice. So Thomas, I'll yield to you for any remarks, and then eager to just get people's input.
I just want to touch on a couple of things that Matt talked about. We've spent $7 trillion all in the name of COVID. That's $53,000 per household. What'd y'all do with your $53,000? You didn't get it. Even if you took the shot, those were $50 a piece. You'd have to take a lot of shots to get $53,000 of benefit from the federal government. Those $1,200 checks, those were cheese in the trap. Most of that money went to Wall Street. It did not go to you. It did not go to your families. And so I drove to DC overnight. They said we were going to pass that first $2 trillion bill with nobody here. And when I got here, everybody was mad at me. Pelosi called me a dangerous nuisance. Trump called me a third-rate grandstander. But I said, listen.
But we agreed you're at worst a second.
Second rate, I'm second rate. But I said, and here's the thing that kept me from getting crushed. I reminded all of these people up here who are making $174,000 a year. If truckers are working, if grocery store workers are working, if the nurses are going to the hospital and taking care of you, and if the farmers are planting the fields, get your ass to work. So I got them to come to work, but I couldn't stop the bill. And now the chickens have come home to roost. That inflation that you see, that's your dollar going down. That's a large part of that. Paying people not to work, that's causing the supply line issues. Sometimes some of you get blamed for supply line issues. It is not the truckers. You're the ones who worked all through this pandemic, the ones who did not stay at home. Drove right through the middle of everything people were afraid of. So God bless you and thank you for that. Something else that I've done here in DC that's cost me personally or politically is, there's 5 vaccine mandates that Joe Biden has put in place. I introduced the first legislation to to repeal one of the vaccine mandates, and that was for the military. I've got a place in my heart for those people who also didn't get days off for COVID, who had to work through this, and we should not be forcing them to get vaccinated. So I introduced that bill, but the thing that's cost me the most up here in terms of fundraising, Matt Gaetz, he's actually more principled than me. He will not take any PAC money. And I didn't say, hey, if they'll give me some, I'll take it. I'm not going to do what they want, but I'll take it. And so surprisingly, I was still getting some PAC money until a few months ago when I said, I will not meet with any company or organization, or even a nonprofit who has a vaccine mandate, don't even bother asking for a meeting in my office. You ain't getting it. You're a private company. You can be as evil to your employees as you want. Okay, I get that. But I don't have to meet with you, and I am not going to meet with you. And my fundraiser called me up after that and said, well, I just canceled your fundraiser. And I said, why? He said, you just pissed off everybody that was going to give you money. I said, good. So anyways, that's, I support you all. I came here also to listen. This isn't just for us to get up here and talk, so I'm going to hand it over to somebody who I thank her every week for getting elected to Congress, because I used to be the most hated person in Washington, D.C. Now I'm just the most hated man. So here's the most hated person in Washington, D.C.
No, I'm the most hated woman. I believe in genders.
Okay.
Two genders,
Two
everybody.
genders. But the most loved Congresswoman, she was stripped of her committees just for doing the right thing. But I'll give you Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, I tell you what, when I walk into a room and I'm up here with Thomas Massie and Matt Gaetz in a room full of truckers, boy, I know I'm in for a good time. So thank you so much for coming to our nation's capital, and I'm sorry that this place is failing you. I'm appalled every single day at the bills that I read, that we vote on, because none of them are actually working for the American people. Now listen, truckers coming to Washington, I think you had a lot of people terrified. They did not know what to expect. All they knew is that Justin Trudeau turned into a dictator and declared full martial law, and then Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the gang up here was trying to figure out how are we going to handle truckers coming to Washington. But I thank you for coming, because this is where you should be able to come and make your voices heard, share your concerns, and force this town to work for you. You're the taxpayers. Yes. So I totally agree with my colleagues here. I'm completely against vaccine mandates. I'm not vaccinated. I've spent most of my time here in Congress so y'all, Thomas Massie and I are suing Nancy Pelosi. That's because they fine us if we don't wear masks, or at least they had been fining us if we didn't wear masks on the House floor until war cropped up, so they had a new political tool to use. But they've used COVID as a political weapon against us and forced us to wear masks on the House floor, but yet they don't wear them. How many times have you seen pictures of them? If they're fundraising, if they're eating in a fancy restaurant, they're doing whatever they want to do. They're not wearing masks, going to Super Bowls, football games, etc. But they wanted us to wear a mask on the House floor and would fine us $2,500. So Thomas Massie and I both got fined, and we are suing Nancy Pelosi, and I think we're doing pretty good in that case.
We're going to win.
Yes. Yes. Now, here's the thing that I'm curious about. How many of you are many of you in here members of a union? Okay, one.
I come from a very pro-union family, yes ma'am.
Okay, with your union, are you required to be vaccinated?
No.
No, okay. Now, that is something I've run across, though. Speaking to groups that are union groups or members of unions, they have told me they're required to be vaccinated every 6 months to get a booster. Unbelievable, right? Especially if you've seen the 9 pages of adverse side effects that Pfizer had to release. So that's completely wrong. Now, another thing is, you're small business owners. That's what I've always been my entire life before I decided to run for Congress. And this has affected you big time, these mandates, but not just the mandates. Right now, the price of gas that you are paying to be able to fuel your trucks and do your job, run your business. This is another failure of Washington. The biggest problem here is they have no plan in place to increase oil production, to help America be energy independent, but yet they're going full steam ahead to stop buying oil from Russia because they think that's the way to do it. They would rather make a deal with Iran. They would rather buy oil from OPEC and everywhere else than incentivize American oil companies to increase production and to increase production here at home so that all of you and all of us can be spending a lot less money at the pump. This place is a failure, and unfortunately, I'm here. We vote no pretty much most of the time. But anyways, I'm just glad to be here, and I'm glad to see you here, and I'll hand it over to Matt Gaetz.
You know, I see a number of you have served in our military, and I want to just make a point about Thomas's important legislation to not impose mandates on active duty military. I took that bill and I offered it as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act in the House Armed Services Committee, and the debate against the bill wasn't led by the Democrats. It was led by the leading Republican on the committee. And so we don't come, Mike Rogers of Alabama opposed Mr. Massie's legislation.
Write that
And
down.
so you know, we need not only to view this through the lens of one party or another party, but there's a holistic, I think, lack of appreciation for the medical tyranny in particular that has gone on here. But that was sort of our introduction. Juan, if there's anybody who'd just like to share a thought, a criticism, a question with us, Juan will get the microphone in front of you. I know it may feel weird with us this close and using mics, but that's the way we make sure they get your information gets collected. So.
All right, so Bob, you want to begin?
Bob?
Sure.
When I started off here, I own trucking companies, towing companies, hazmat companies. I've been all over the world. I've been involved in Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, Dubai. What I see we're doing here, we went from being energy efficient to energy dependent on foreign oil. It's got to come to a halt. Biden's tied the hands of the oil companies, the finance companies, everybody behind them, behind their backs, to play footsies with foreign oil. Okay, I still question how much money fell off the pallet in the billions of dollars that went to Iran. That was all cash. I'd like to know where some of the crumbs went. It's very apparent from what we're seeing now, we're gonna play games with Iran. It's a very dangerous country, and we shouldn't be there. But
Well, let me make a note on that, and then I know you've got more to share. Just today, in the House Armed Services Committee, we had the leading general that oversees the South America area of responsibility. And she was testifying and said that the biggest concern that she has is that Russia might be more harmful to us in South America than even China. And that surprised me. And I said, well, what's the worst thing that Russia could do to us from their posture in South America? And her answer was that they could actually provide more weapon systems and more parts and more training and more missiles and vessels to Venezuela. And I said, well, gosh, General, as you're here talking to me, rather than opening up leases in the interior of the United States where there's a lot of energy production that we could get going very quickly, instead of instituting our Keystone pipeline policy from the Trump era, that we were negotiating to go buy Venezuelan oil. And then she said that what they would do with the cash is possibly go buy Russian military equipment. So imagine that. Just imagine how much sense that makes. We're going to stop buying Russian oil, but then instead of having more domestic production, we're going to go get Venezuelan oil, and then they're going to use the money to go buy Russian arms. Right. That'll really show the Russians.
While they're using Chinese currency to do it.
Right. But I think
we can get a better bargain if he deals with Afghanistan to buy our equipment back. Instead of kind of a deal we could get there. Since they got it without paying a dime on it, so I think we could get a wholesale. Well, one of the things he's made is Made in America pledge, make our oil back in America. If you're gonna pledge something for this country, that's what they're all doing here.
Well, Thomas, you're on the Science Committee, and you get to see this where these practical realities that our constituent face come into conflict with the climate agenda, where no more fossil fuel can be burned under any circumstance. Maybe reflect on that to just explain the headwinds.
They will not let any crisis go to waste. COVID, the whole last 2 years of COVID is kind of like global climate change and fast forward. Except you got to see the lies, before, in your lifetime. the fairy tale that is global climate change, man-made global climate change, and blaming all of you, which they love to do, and your trucks for contributing to that we'll never see that lie. I mean, a lot of it see it right now, but it won't be proven because they never make a prediction about 5 years from now or 10 years from now. The prediction is always about 100 years from now.
Wait, AOC said the world is going to like blow up in a ball of fire, right?
That was already scheduled to happen, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
So anyways, with the exception of Al Gore and a few others, they always make the predictions further out, but they're using this, make no mistake, and then the latest one they're using is the war in Ukraine. They're gonna try and blame the inflated oil prices on that, but they're gonna exacerbate it. Anything that they're blaming somebody else for, you can guarantee that's what they're doing. And so when you see the sanctions that they're gonna put on the oil from Russia, okay, if we had the capacity or the commitment, like you said, to be energy independent, and we could supplant those hundreds of thousands or millions of barrels of oil that we're not going to get from there, that'd be fine. But that's not their plan. Their plan is to, by increasing the supply, diminish the demand. There'll be less demand for shipping stuff across the country. There'll be less demand for cars. There'll be less demand for...
Wait, no, they have a plan. They want all of us to drive electric vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you'll be converting your trucks to electric vehicle batteries. That is their plan, no kidding. By 2035, they want every car and truck sold in the United States to be an electric vehicle.
All right, I have an admission to make. I drive a Tesla, but I put Friends of Coal license plates on it because that's where the electricity
But
comes
how long is
from.
your extension cord as you're driving down the highway with it? Or if you get abandoned on the interstates when a snowstorm hits and you can't go anywhere, what happens when your battery goes dead?
It's a brick. It's a 5,000-pound brick. If
Yeah,
that happens,
and let me
yeah.
explain from the
So-
hazmat position I'm in. One of your vehicles get into a crash and catches on fire, we have no way to put the fires out with these new batteries. So
Yeah.
people are fully aware, you'll have incinerated people. So the technology
God
is
can't put out
very
lithium
limited
on fire.
to what
It's
the
like
heck you're
Chernobyl.
talking about.
Yeah.
Just give you a heads up on it and realize the size of a battery, you'd have to put one of our trucks. So that weight of that battery takes down the freight we could haul or the fuel we could carry.
To your
So
point,
that hurts them.
yeah.
It
So
hurts.
you'll be able to deliver less, you'll make less money, you'll have to make more trips, it'll require more drivers. And then this will also be an electric vehicle battery that we will be dependent on China because China dominates the industry at over 85%, and America does not compete at less than 4%.
We need to go back right where we were to become energy independent, where Donald Trump had us, and that's the end of the issue. There's nowhere else we're gonna go with all this new technology. It's gonna put the country out of business, okay?
That's their goal.
the part.
Right.
The other part of this issue, and we brought it up with fuel, we all know the situation. Look at the high cost of tires. With the fuel, the oil, you can't make tires, you can't make seats, you can't produce vehicles. So no matter what your electric batteries do, without fossil fuel, you're not gonna produce a damn thing. And Matt, you're familiar with, Matt Cartwright from Scranton. Okay, well, Matt Carter, I'm from Scranton incidentally, and I knew Joe Biden when we were kids. So, believe me, there's no.
Tell us about corn pop.
Back to Matt Cartwright is trying, and a lot of these guys don't realize it, is trying to put in a $5 million liability policy on the transportation industry. In other words, right now we carry $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million if we want. But to put $5 million on a vehicle, nobody's gonna get insurance or can't afford it. Matt Cartwright is a former ambulance chaser. His wife's in a major law firm in Scranton. And what do they advertise? Truck accident specialists. Okay? This is the problem with Congress, that they, ambulance chasers that are there have relationships, because he may say, I have nothing to do with my family business, but if she buys filet mignon, he gets a half of it. So that's the problem we got here, but it's at the cost of these guys busting their butts every single day on the road. I drove a tractor trailer all over the country for years. I've owned as high as 600 trucks. So I've been around a long time, in this industry. These guys work like dogs out there in the weather, the snow, when people are home sleeping. They need the respect earned for exactly what they do, because if the truck doesn't bring it, you are not going to get it. The ports will be closed, the interstates will be shut down. These guys have to make a living, but it affects you. When you go home tonight and you pay at that gas pump, not as a congressman, but as an individual, where you buy the milk or the groceries, you say, what the hell is going on, Joe Biden? You're killing America, and you're killing American culture.
Maybe, yeah, we have been stuck here inside the Beltway, and so maybe if someone could give us a sense of what it's like out at Hagerstown right now, what is the sentiment, and are folks concerned about that basic, just kind of performance of their duties, like, you know, having to meet those regulations and certainly to deal with the inflation? Who can give us a little brief?
Quick things if I may, then I'll
We'll
shut
come
up.
back to you. I want to give somebody else a chance. We'll
Yeah.
come back to you. Yeah, go right ahead, sir.
I was out there last night. I was out there last night and they're upset. They're ready to do something else. You guys have been a complete failure, not necessarily all three of you.
We know the collective you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I don't blame you.
ridiculous and we're literally tired of it across the board. I mean, from the beginning of the emergency that's going on for 2 years, that was funded, that was created to push us down and keep it, you know, the federal government says, oh, we don't have nothing to do with it, but you're funding every state to enforce these things. And it's gotta stop. Stop funding any of it. You guys hold purse strings. Stop it. Just don't sign anything, vote no on everything until they start waking up and give our rights back.
And what would be your message? Because we have to have these arguments and discussions and debates in the hallways and the elevators, on the floor during votes. What would be your message specifically to Republicans who would say, well, we're sympathetic against these mandates, but we've got to keep funding the government. I mean, that's our job.
I'm sorry.
Shut it down.
The government's not here to rule us, and that's what they're doing. They've been doing it for 30, 40 years, and it just continually gets worse. They need to stop. They're here to fight for us, to stop any entity from forcing bad policies on us. That's what they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to be here buddy-buddy, chummy-chummy with them, and help them get better off. They need to fight for us. They need to stop the bad things from happening. I mean, you guys gave tons of money to Pfizer. We know that's gonna be a poison and it's gonna come out and they'll probably beat you with it later. I'm sorry, but this is the wrong, you guys have to stop. They can't, you gotta just shrink the government. What's the question? I could go on for days. I mean,
Well,
it's,
you know,
I agree
what
with this
makes
guy
people
though, I
angry is-
totally agree.
Yeah,
He's
is it-
right. So what you're saying is what most Americans think and feel, but the problem is up here, they do not get it. Or they've grown deaf or have forgotten. But most of the people we work with on both sides of the aisle do not understand that great statement you just made. You do not work for this government. It should be working for you, and it does need to shrink, and it needs to be under control.
We received a letter from the president, it was to the speaker, but we've got a copy of it. And in the bill, what the president's asking for is more humanitarian relief abroad, billions more, and to accelerate global vaccination efforts. So they want you to pay for pharmaceutical companies to do development and distribution of vaccines to other
Wait, for
countries.
future COVID, not
Yes.
current COVID, future COVID.
So would those be
And then more
examples?
vaccines and vaccine the world.
you gotta stop the Emergency Powers Act, because they're gonna turn this back on after the election. I'm sorry, it's not gone away. They're gonna turn it back on. This is not gonna go away. You guys have to do something. I'm sorry, it's not.
I appreciate that feedback, very helpful.
Just real quick, the biggest thing we need to change here is to quit doing these omnibus bills where they put everything in one thing. Because the same bill that funds Planned Parenthood gives a raise to the soldiers. And they go home and they say, oh, I gave the soldiers a raise. Yeah, but you voted for this and we didn't want you to vote for that. They hide behind the omnibus bill. If we can split these bills up the way they're supposed to be, then they can't hide behind a big vote on a big bill that's got everything in it.
Sir, RC?
You probably don't want to hear from me.
I don't mind, go right ahead.
I drove my first truck in 1971. I purchased my first truck in 1974. The truckers shut down the entire country for 11 days in 1974. The produce rotted in the fields. Watermelons, tomatoes. The way we done it, we didn't have social media. Social media is probably one of the most Luciferian gimmicks that has been imposed on the American people of anything that I can think of. In 1974, we had
Less of it's imposed on Marjorie now, because they keep kicking her off.
Well, in 1974, when we shut the country down, we did it with a word of mouth from one to another, CB radios. All we did was pull in, turned our trucks off at the fuel islands, and nobody could get fuel. Right now, most of these guys in here are independents. You're not even looking at all the company drivers that their companies told them, if you go to this Convoy thing, look for another job, you're fired. Tens of thousands of them that wanted to be here are not. Let me from a trucker's, one time I had the largest truck company in Northwest Florida. And I saw NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. Man, that was gonna be the greatest thing since sliced bread. It broke us. I went from, at that time in history, I went from 5 trucks down to 1 in less than 6 months. And I had to operate that one myself. I have a question for you and I need an answer. This magic golden pen that Obama used to sign into to law or an executive order, and he passed that golden pen down to Joe Biden. Why in the hell can't we take the pen away from him? How do we do that?
There was a guy who held it for a few years in between those two.
Yeah.
And he tended to use it a good amount himself. So, look.
But for good.
Yes.
When he used it for good, okay, but he didn't get as much good out of it as the people who have held it for so many years. We the American people, how about let us have a voice? This ain't just about the high prices of fuel. This is not about the inflation going up. This is about America, these buildings, this land around here. Who purchased it? Who paid for it? Who pays to keep the lights on? We ought to have the opportunity to evict somebody if they're not treating our property correctly.
I totally agree with you.
I'm
all in. I'm like,
how do we take
can you
the
go with me to
pen?
the House floor and talk to Nancy Pelosi today?
How do we take it away from them? How do we do that? Look here, Donald Trump was impeached 3 times over
2 times.
be it. Well, the third one, you know, but look, over stuff that absolutely could not be proven. Over stuff that absolutely had no bearing on what we, the American people, were doing at the time. Now, how many absolute treasonous acts have Joe Biden done since he's been in office? Think about it now.
Well, I introduced 4 articles of impeachment on Joe Biden, so I'm right there with you.
Hey,
I think
it's
he's
time.
thrown out.
It's time. Here we go with another one. Okay. I'm full of them, Matt. There's been a lot of laws that you guys will. We're gonna vote on the omnibus bill. Okay, that's, to me, you're voting on funding the government, right?
Correct.
We're gonna keep you guys in business for another 6 months or whatever. Okay, now. Why do y'all have to stack 8 or 10 bills in between that omnibus bill and you think you're fooling someone? The American people are not that stupid.
Well, I'll tell you why they do it. It's because members of Congress don't want to be responsible for individual votes for or against specific provisions.
Right.
They want to be able to say, oh, well, I had to vote yes, because, we also had the mothers and the apple pie in that bill.
I wanna give you the apple
It's by
pie and
design.
take the apple away from you.
Right, well, there's a lot worse than the apple in those, but that's why I think Thomas's call for reforming the way we even look at these things is an important one. But, to be honest, Republicans and Democrats in the leadership specifically designed this system for this purpose. And it is principally what we fight against every day. You had your hand up earlier. I'll come back
I
to
got
you.
one more and I'll leave you
All right,
alone.
well, we'll get you back in the rotation, but go ahead, I want to get some more voices.
So, we're talking about oil, we're talking about vaccines, we're talking about the convoy here. But another thing that's going on behind the scenes that a lot of drivers don't see coming is that you have to have a vaccination endorsement on your commercial license in order to operate a commercial vehicle. Okay, I've been driving for the better part of almost 8 years. Okay, my mother did it when she was young, I do it now. So, you can't go certain places, you can't do certain things. Look at Canada. You can't get out of your house to go to the grocery store without a vaccine card. We cannot be like that. We have a constitution for that. We had the forefathers to protect us from that. We need the people here to stand up for what they believed in and give us, the people, the ability to live our own lives. You can't sit here and vaccinate a child when they're 5 or 6 years old, okay? You can't force somebody to do something against their will. That's not freedom, that's tyranny, okay? I don't want to get anything that I don't want done. They don't have a vaccine mandate. They don't have a polio vaccine mandate. There's so many different diseases that don't have mandates that are far more crucial than this pandemic, okay? Now, Ms. Greene, I've watched you on social media, I've listened to you talk a lot, and I absolutely adore you, okay? The way you stand up and the way you talk to the people higher than you is magnificent. So the fact that we have a chance to be here and have a voice, I respect 3 of you for letting that happen. Our businesses are in shambles. Our homes are in shambles. You cannot sit here and let them tell us that we have to have a jab in our arm to go to work. You can't do that to us, the trucks, or the children, because then we become what? Dependent on the government, and the government puts us in a cage and they tell us when we can eat, sleep, or drink, and that's not okay.
Not on my watch. We aren't going
That's why
there.
I'm following you with every eyeball I've got, and I've got both of them locked in.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm with you. I totally agree.
I got a question from the lady over there.
I was not aware of that vaccination endorsement requirement on CDL. Is that a state requirement or is that a federal DOT requirement?
It's coming in with the new highway bill that's come around.
So it's a proposal
Yes,
that you want us to
and
fight.
it needs to not
Are you
be
familiar with
done.
that in the transportation?
No, I'm not familiar with that, but we did force a vote in our committee. Here's the problem. Pelosi controls everything that comes to the floor. She can't control the outcome of the vote, so she controls what we get to vote on. But inside of our committees, we control what we get to vote on, even when we're in the minority. So we offered an amendment to outlaw in the Transportation Committee any kind of vaccine passport. It failed. Every Democrat voted against our amendment to keep something like that from happening.
I have one last thing to say. So, you look at what's happening in Ottawa right now, okay? There was 15,000 truck drivers that lost their jobs on that border because they didn't want to provide proof of a vaccination status, okay? That's not okay for drivers to be stranded in a vehicle that's not theirs by their companies because their company said you have to do this, and if not, then you're not our problem anymore. Well, when we get in your guys' trucks and we operate, we are the company's problem at that point. So you are there to defend us. If we have to have this across a country, that makes a tad bit more sense than to leave our state. But at the same time, you can't sit here and fire us from our livelihoods and strand us in the middle of nowhere and then tell us, oh, well, you don't want to get a vaccine, you don't want to provide your status, that's not our problem, and that's not okay.
While Juan's bringing the microphone around, I do think something we can do to be helpful is to provide the organizers of the convoy the list of the members on the transportation committee and their specific roll call votes on these amendments.
And their phone numbers.
Amen.
That's where you can make a difference. Call them. Let me tell you something. We have every radical leftist in the country calls my office and lectures my staff. Some of my staff is here, they're nodding their heads. Call these people and tell them, and you tell them exactly what their votes are doing to you and your livelihood and your businesses. Call them.
Let me
Yeah.
answer that.
Does it make a difference?
I've been on the
It
floor.
should.
Paid for, aren't they already decided?
No,
No,
I've been on the
no,
floor.
the pressure makes a difference. That's why we're not wearing masks anymore. They're polling. They're getting killed in the polling, and they have elections coming up. Call them.
They
Call
don't
them.
see the light until they feel the heat. But there's only 3 phone calls you should make. Everybody in here's got 2 senators and a representative. When you call somebody somebody you can't vote for, they might be polite or they might hang up on you, but I can guarantee you that staffer is not passing that message on. But if you can vote for that person, and everybody in here can vote for 1 rep and 2 senators, find out who those 3 people are, be polite, call them once a month,
polite.
get some friends to call. Do you know there's days, I'm not Marjorie Taylor Greene, there's some days I get 3 phone calls from 750,000 people, and that is it. And you can believe those 3 people get listened to. And I've been on the floor when people look at me and say, I'm not sure which way to go on this. How many phone calls did you get for it, and how many did you get against it? So I know it's getting in their head.
Sir?
Yeah. You asked the gentleman earlier about what the feeling was out in the convoy. Well, we were in the Freedom Convoy, and they ended up lashing up, so we were blessed enough to get here and have an audience with you. There's a couple things I want to touch on. I promise I won't blow Gaetz. First thing is, we left northern Michigan coming down this convoy, come all this way. The support that we had from the civilian population was overwhelming. From northern Michigan, almost where the Upper Peninsula is, all the way to Ohio, every single overpass had at least 2 people on it, cheering us on. So we'd stop at rallies, and we'd have people come up with donations. They had little or nothing. I had a lady come up. All she had in northern Michigan, she raised chickens. She had 10 dozen eggs to donate. Wow. I've had people come up to me.
I thought you were gonna say she gave you a chicken to bring with you on the trip.
Yeah, gallon-size Ziploc bag with individual lifesavers in it. This is all she could do. Please take a couple handfuls. The support that we have out there is overwhelming. And I take time to talk to these people. And to show you how hard up they are, they're putting their trust in a bunch of truck drivers because their politicians are not doing what the hell they're supposed to do for them. These people they've lost hope. They live in their cars, following us around because they believe more in a bunch of ragtag truck drivers trying to make a voice be heard than they do with their own local politicians.
I do too.
It's a crime.
I have more faith in truck drivers than I do most of these people here.
What do you think would give people hope?
Leadership. They need leadership. They don't need no BS. They need somebody to follow that has a voice, has conviction, will not back down, and has their best interests at heart. When a person elects a politician to office, every time I vote, I've voted every year that I could. That's what I look for. It's hard to find it, so you gotta settle for second best, or whatever. But there's no people out there, hoorah, hoorah, I'm in charge, I'm gonna go to Washington DC, do what you told me to do, come hell or high water. These people are losing it, and tying on with fuel prices. In 2012, I went through this with Obama. When fuel prices hit $5 a gallon, I had a truck that was paid for, I was profitable, I was running flatbeds for Mercer. Fuel hit $5 a gallon, which is it's at now. And I'll bet you, without a doubt, everybody in this room will tell you, we are right now on the precipice of losing our collective asses. This is unsustainable. I lost everything, even though it was paid for, I couldn't do it. So I had to sell my truck, go to the oil fields of North Dakota, and get a job as a company driver. It's taken me 10 years to work my way back up. And now I see this, I'm pissed. Because it's gonna be $6 a gallon soon. No matter what legislation you do or whatever, the trucks will have no other option than shut off, not out of spite, not out of meanness, out of necessity, because you cannot run a truck at $6 a gallon for fuel. And I believe without a doubt, everybody in here would agree with that.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. Well, let's go, we promised to come back here to the front row. But I think your point is an astute one, that these inflation and fuel issues are not unwindable from the supply chain issues, because if people can't move product because of fuel, then the supply chain gets worse.
It's gonna further escalate your supply chain issue, and it's not, because then, you know, they'll be blaming the truck drivers, and that's not necessarily true. When you can't run your truck, you can't run it. And you think you have supply chain issues now? You wait till that fuel hits $6 a gallon, you ain't seen nothing yet.
We'll be using toilet paper as currency again.
Yeah, exactly.
And Nancy will not get her ice cream bars.
Yeah, pitiful.
No, but it'll hurt all of us. Thank you for that. That's good information. Thank you.
Yeah, at $6 a gallon, you're looking at a buck a mile just on a truck.
Yes, my name is Maurice Simmons. I'm a horse because I was speaking at the last rally. Also known as Michael the Black Man on the radio in Miami, Broward County, and West Palm Beach County. Trump can hear my station now, 88.7. Boss Radio, or you go at 88.7, The Blaze. That's my app. You can hear my show at 5 o'clock every day. I want you to know, I got you guys back. I am the founder of Blacks for Trump, and I'm the guy that stands behind Trump all the time with the Blacks for Trump sign, the greatest president in America's history.
Maurice, don't get us in trouble. We can't campaign in this building.
You can't campaign?
No, this is
Okay.
not a campaign building.
I won't get you in trouble.
Don't do
I
that.
got your guys back because I am the answer to Black Lives Matter. I'm the answer to Obama. I'm the answer to Oprah. I am the answer to Antifa. Because every time they say, Michael, we're doing this for you, why don't you? Shut up, I don't like you. You are despicable. I'm here for my white conservative brothers, my deplorables. I used to say Trump and Republicans are not racist. Now I'm saying Trump Republicans are not racist. Because there's a big difference. Because there are some racists in the Republican Party that make you look bad. These guys here, other than Trump, are my greatest heroes. And I want y'all to give them a hand real quick, because I cry when I see, especially her and this guy on TV. I just really met him.
Amen.
But this guy here and her, wow. I actually cried. Damn, why am I crying? I'm a grown man. But anyway, I want you to know that I got your back, and whenever you need me, I'll be there. They called me to come. I came to this here. I was supposed to bring a bunch of brothers with me. We didn't get to do that. Next time, I promise you, I got buses now. I got 4 black buses that say Blacks for Trump on it, and I have 5
Well, if the price of gas keeps going up, you'll only have 3.
I'll always make a way. So I'm like a little Trump. I'm gonna make sure on the black side I'm that little Trump guy. We got 5 Rolls Royces.
You're back to get me in trouble. I'm gonna go over here.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's go over here to Derek.
Yeah.
Let's go over here to Derek.
Yeah, go ahead, Derek. Campaign.
I wasn't stopping you. I wasn't stopping.
I wouldn't stop him either. I like it.
No, you don't need to stop.
I guess I got one quick question to start with here. With everything, obviously we all know that they're starting to shut down the mandates, all that, especially here in DC and so forth. I mean, after we're gone, and after the midterms, there's gonna be another flare, I would imagine. What's to keep this from ever happening again? What do you guys have in store and in mind to keep this from ever being re-implemented and us having to come back here again to make this happen?
Well, can I just let you know you're right? Because what we're voting on tomorrow is going to have approximately $22.5 billion for future COVID. That's how it's termed, future COVID, and to vaccinate the world. So, of course it's not going away, because they're already asking for money that we're voting tomorrow in the $1.5 trillion omnibus bill. Tomorrow, $22.5 billion for future COVID.
And they're wanting us to pay.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're wanting you to pay. They're asking us to say yes. I promise you I'm voting no. I will not be voting yes for that. But no, you're right, it's not going away. And it's a shame, it's terrible. What can we do? We have to be in the majority. We have to be in the majority. Republicans have to be in the majority in order for our votes to overtake theirs and change this type of legislation.
Let me say something. When we get the majority, we need to quit feeding the pet snakes.
Right.
Here are the pet snakes: CDC, pet snake; Department of Labor, pet snake; OSHA, pet snake; CMS, pet snake; Department of
FDA.
Education, FBI,
FDA.
FDA. Okay, there's not
DOJ.
enough. All right, we've gone through the whole alphabet. But listen, why I call them pet snakes? Because Republicans feed them when they're in the majority. And then when we go in the minority or the White House changes, they weaponize them. Those are the foot soldiers of oppression in this country. And then you look for somebody to blame. Your congressman will say, well, it's an administrative rule. And a lot of this stuff wasn't even an executive order. It's just they weaponize these three-letter agencies. They claim to have power they don't have. And it takes 2 or 3 years to get to the Supreme Court and strike it down, even if you have a good Supreme Court. So we need to quit funding them. Quit funding it.
Everything. I don't know whether that's quit funding them, is there anything that can be put in place, amendment or constitutional amendment or anything like that, to keep them from even having the opportunity to put something in?
Yeah, to remove their authorities.
Yes.
Right, no, I think
You're right.
that it's those things together. What's crazy is, I would have never thought that like the CDC could set rent policy in our country. Right, that's crazy to me, that would even be allowed to happen. So during this time of pandemic, these agencies, the pet snakes, have developed these exquisite authorities that we would have never guessed. And I do think that part of the legislative agenda for Republicans should be specifically in law, black letter, no room for interpretation, to constrain these elements of government so that even if they only had $1, they wouldn't have the legal authority to go and bind people to this tyranny.
So how about a standalone bill to see who says yes or no to it?
Well, I have a bill called the We Will Not Comply Act that makes vaccine mandates illegal and opens up for anyone that's being forced to take a vaccine to sue them, whether it's your company, a school, the government, any entity. I believe they should be completely illegal, and that's why I wrote the bill, We Will Not Comply Act.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question about that, was seeing if there was any way that the companies, I'm my own company, so I don't enforce that, obviously. But any company that has enforced it or coerced in any way, shape, or form, is there any way that they can be legally and financially responsible for the term of that person's life? This is a permanent situation. This vaccine is not something that just comes and goes. It is in that body, it is in there for life. So if there's any medical issues that come up in the future, because they could be traced back to this, that company needs to be responsible 100% for that person's medical and financial withdrawal from.
Right now, we're under medical martial law. There's something called the PrEP Act. So you all knew that the vaccine manufacturers are already protected. Biden says that gun manufacturers can't be sued. That's wrong. If they create a faulty product, they can be sued. The only company that can't is the vaccine manufacturers. But under the PrEP Act, which they kicked in a couple years ago, everything that's done in the name of COVID is covered from liability. You can't, I've got a constituent, they gave her a COVID test, they stuck the swab into her brain. She cannot sue them. She had to get brain surgery to fix it. She cannot sue them because of the PrEP Act. And so we need to take those kind of emergency powers. The PrEP Act, the reason I call it medical martial law, it overrides state law. All of those, when you sue somebody, that's a state issue. And it should be a state issue. The federal government doesn't have the authority to do that, but that's where we are right now. We need to repeal things like the PrEP Act.
Absolutely.
Great. Who's next? Oh, you haven't had a chance to speak, sir.
So, my question is in regards to the real reason that we're here and how we can get back to fair elections and how they can be counted manually again, or if there's anything that's going to be done to prevent something like a stolen election in the future.
Where are you from?
Michigan, northern Michigan.
I should have guessed.
Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan, where they wait at the center in Detroit to see how the rest of the state voted to figure out how many ballots they need. We've now reached the YouTube ban portion of the town hall.
Right.
No, I think that
Tell them what we were
you want
supposed
to
to
be
do.
very, you want to be very suspicious of federalizing elections. If we federalize elections, then you get the swamp and the beltway of Washington, D.C. telling you how to count votes in Lansing, Michigan, or in Tallahassee, Florida. I think the states have to have, the bar raised, certainly, and particularly in some states, but I would offer you this hope. My state, Florida, used to be the laughingstock of the country on elections. We had the hanging chads and the dimpled chads and the lost chads. I think they cut open an alligator and found some votes for Al Gore recently. But we learned that it's not about what laws you pass or what you put on the books. That stuff isn't self-affecting. It is all about the human beings who are counting the ballots, implementing the systems, and ensuring chain of custody. And so my governor, Ron DeSantis, in his first 10 days, fired people in our state who could not run clean elections.
Right.
And we had to have all kind of lawsuits and stuff about that, but it was the right thing because at the end of the day, we became a model for the country very quickly. Now we can actually tell you who won the state of Florida with some proximity to the actual election. Not
On election day.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really
Unlike
nuts.
Georgia, my
I
state.
think they're still counting. They're still trying to find fraud, and they found it. They're still trying to prosecute it in Fulton County. So I think it's a state system. Thomas, what would you add about sort of the federal election efforts that we've seen in Congress?
I guess part of my question, I'm sorry. Part of my question is, will they be doing away with the mail-in ballots?
That's the biggest thing, that's the biggest place where I think they're subject to gaming the elections, is in mail-in ballots. And what I'm concerned about is there gonna be another variant that pops up in October.
Midterm variant.
So that the midterm variant, so that they can motivate that. They may try to find some excuse to go back to mail-in ballots. You gotta resist it. But I wanna reiterate what Matt Gaetz is saying. This has gotta be done state by state.
Yep.
You do not want people in the swamp here officiating the election. Your best chance, honestly, is your county clerk. Make sure, or whoever in your county is counting the ballots. Pay attention to who the Secretary of State is, or whoever runs your state elections, because that's where it's at. Do not let Nancy Pelosi or these bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. run the elections.
I totally agree.
We heard from a lot of folks in Rome, Georgia on Saturday about elections.
We did. So as a matter of fact, this is always brought up. And this is why it's such an important issue, and it's not going away. But I completely agree with you guys. It has to be a state issue. The last thing you want is the federal government getting involved in your state elections. So totally what Thomas said, go talk to your county clerk, talk to people in your state, and hold them accountable.
Well, we have to combat their arguments. Like when they say things like voter ID is racist, we cannot allow that to stand. We have to incessantly mock that and expose it for being implicit.
We have a voter ID, so they don't consider that racist in Congress.
Yeah, we have to
actually
put
have
it in
voter
Congress.
IDs
That's a
with
good
our
point.
names and pictures. Yeah, Thomas will show you.
Our voting card has our picture on it.
So Democrats are not against these. They use them in Congress.
I have only reserved this room until now, and I think in about 7 minutes this legally becomes an insurrection. So so let's try to do a little rapid fire. Go ahead, Bert.
We don't want to be accused of that.
No,
It's frowned upon here.
Okay, so all I'm gonna do real quickly is I would like to present you with two bills. The Vaccine Manufacturer Full Product Liability Restoration Act of 2021, written by the people for the people, because we are the people. And written in legislation code as well. And then the other bill that I have that I need to present to you.
If we get that passed, they'll change the definition of vaccination again.
Okay, and then the other bill I have is the amendments to section 230, eliminating censorship from big tech, version 2, and these have already been endorsed by several. Their names are upon them. I just want to present it to you at this time.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll take a look at those. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much.
Matt, the last thing, and
Well, I got to go to somebody who hadn't had a chance yet. Marcy, please.
Thank you. I know time is of the essence, and promise I'll make it fast as well. So it's been a heck of a journey. I'm a trucker's wife. I don't drive a truck. And I came on this trip to have fun and meet people, and I had no idea what I was walking into at all. It's been a very humbling experience. I love people, and I've gotten a chance to talk to a lot of them from a lot of different places. Some not even from this country originally. You know, there's a truck driver that I met. He grew up in a country where he didn't know what freedom was. It was communism. And he came here and he had such a love for this country. He wasn't even raised yet. And he has more of a love for country than some Americans I've met. And there was a woman from China who has 3 children and got out of there because she wanted to worship the way she wanted to worship. And it's a beautiful story that she has. And there was a 63-year-old lady who drove the wrong day, so she had to come back the next day and drove over 200 miles just to see us, because she made a promise to her 93-year-old veteran father. He said, it's not much, but give him this and tell him to please go there and help keep my country free. That's what I fought for back in the 50s, I believe. And now I need that back again. And so here's my question. How do we keep our country free? Because right now in all of the mandates, it's not. I want to know, I am vaccinated. I am not anti-vaccine. I am anti-mandate because it was my choice. At the end of the day, we don't have to agree on the item. We have to agree that everything has to stay free in this country. It's the freedom of choice. The freedom of choice does not absolve us of our consequences of those choices. But to have that freedom is what I think we all need to stick to striving for, even if we disagree on what the item is.
You know, I've learned that government is what the people who are in charge can get away with. And I hate to say that. It should be a government of laws, not a government of men. But more and more, I'm realizing the power is with you all. You guys, 435 of you have more power than 435 of us, if you're willing to use it. And so my hat is off to you all. Thank you. Everybody needs to push back within the means of their ability. I don't want anybody to go bankrupt because they lost their job or whatever. But just like Marjorie and I have done with Nancy Pelosi, we let her find us. We went without the mask in front of TV. There's no disputing the facts. And then she's reducing our salary. Now, we can afford that, but it's not about our salary. We are suing her because what she's doing is what a lot of employers, like you talked about, the truckers who work for companies that want to do something but can't, or the truckers who are going to have to get a vaccine because that's the policy of their company. Companies, private individuals can be capable of tyranny as well. Corporations can be capable of tyranny. So push back against it wherever you see it, whether it's in private industry or whether it's here.
Juan, this gentleman had a chance to weigh in.
Well, I'm probably talk loud enough without it.
Yeah, we want to make sure it gets you on.
Well, I understand you guys are all against the vaccines. I'm busy. I got multiple businesses that we run. I don't have time for it, but I'm running for school board just for the fact that these kids don't need this vaccine. They don't need this passport. They don't need none of this stuff. But what can you guys do to take maybe along with the vaccine, but try to maybe like get rid of some of the CRT, the SEL, and some of the other stuff that's being taught in these schools. That's why I said, that's why I'm running for school board, is to try to eliminate this stuff. I mean, we have local schools by us now that are putting litter boxes in gender neutral bathrooms.
All 3 of us are on a bill that I wrote and introduced. It's 1 sentence long. It says the Department of Education shall terminate on December 31st. That's all we're doing. Once we get them out of the policy, I mean, there's 4,000 people in the Department of Education make $100,000 a year, and they don't teach anything. They don't write a book. They try to control what your kids learn and how they learn it. So it's our job to get the government.
And then they send the Department of Justice after you.
That's right.
If you're trying to hold your school board. One of the top agendas for the Republican Party when we take back the House is to stop CRT and to work on these issues. So
yes.
We stop the CRT, but and I guess I push in our area is that we have to get the people to vote for your school board representatives. Because you guys are struggling right now because there's nobody coming up behind you that have been taught the right morals. So if we don't vote the right people into our school boards at the younger age and teach our kids the right way, you guys are gonna have difficult for the rest of your lives.
Well, I think a lot of the parents that are running for school board all over America now and winning are our next round of backup in the United States Congress. I think they're gonna go win the battles in the school boards, and they're gonna be the ones in 2024 and beyond who actually come and give us the backup that's necessary. So I don't mean to promote you too quickly, but we appreciate you playing a role in the movement and offering yourself as a candidate, because oftentimes people don't feel like they even have choices in a school board election that represent them. And so the more people that give the electorate more choices, the better.
Well, as we were walking down the road today, I was actually telling my buddy here that I was trying to pick out which office is gonna be mine someday down here.
Well, don't look at any of ours. They're in the basement.
Exactly, we don't, I don't have those offices.
Well, hold on, I can't go without the microphone.
quick.
All right, hold on. Well, last question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, now this is, I was asked to bring this up, even though it's not connected to the truckers, but it is. A lot of our people in our hometown have asked me to approach this. Right now, Congress is the only one that can put term limits on the ballot. We the people can't put term limits on the ballot. If we could, they'd already be there. How can the American people put term limits on the next national ballot? They want them, they demand them. That's the only way we're gonna get rid of Pelosi and Sure and all of these deadbeats that are forcing these damn laws down our throats.
So in Florida, as you know, we did put it on the ballot. It did pass. It passes almost every place it is on the ballot. I believe that the best vehicle for term limits is an Article 5 convention of the states. That is the mechanism by which states sign up. Well, that is the way our founders designed that type of constitutional change. Florida's in. We have added additional states, but we're not at the threshold yet. But I yield to Ms. Greene if you want.
Well, again, Nancy Pelosi is the one that brings the bills to the floor.
Right.
So we're not even able to vote on it, unfortunately. I'm sorry to say.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for coming. I am past my allotted time, but we will have staff hanging out if there are additional issues that we'd like to discuss or that you'd like our advocacy on. But thanks for coming and sharing your
For
thoughts.
that information about that designation, please.
Great, thank you all.
Hey, thank you guys for having us. Thank you.
I just try to get everybody
Our 10 minutes or so, who's in and back, a lot of these issues that truckers face. Yes.
Chris.
North Dakota.
I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
Yeah.
No, I got it, I got it. I'm good. I'm good.
Can I too?
Should be on here.
Great.
Can I get your phone?
Yeah, sure. I think this gentleman.
Bernie.
Hey, thanks for coming today. Sir, thanks so much. I have staff.
Get somebody that travel.
I was only going to drive 1.9. Yeah, I got hugs. I came all the way from Nebraska. That's my truck.
Honestly, we're trying to drag out the time.
I'm
Where's home for you? jumping in.
Thank
I've known him for a long time.
For freedom and against these emergency powers. And I think what I heard today is that people are worried that even after the COVID is long gone, the policies that constrain freedom will still be here. And so people are talking about legislative solutions, oversight solutions, and there are really a litany of concerns people have. They want their government to be more responsible.
That's right. $1 a mile to operate this truck. $6-7 a gallon. These truckers have no choice but to park their trucks.
Well, and they're being honest with us that there is an interoperability with energy prices and supply chain issues. And if the energy prices soar, these supply chain issues are going to be exacerbated. And that's something the country should prepare for if the Biden policies continue. Thank you. Thanks very much. God bless you. And you're right. Really we got to be hanging out on the floor.
I'll see you. I'll see you at home.
Sir, I just wanted to ask, do you feel today was a success?
Say again?
Do you feel today was a success, your meeting with the representatives?
I think today, if any of this makes it on to any media, which, you know, some of it might, if it does, it will show the American people that there is a few of us that are actually fighting for right. These three that were in here today, yes. What we did with them, you know, we handed them some bills that need to be implemented, that need to be put before Congress, but Pelosi will never put them on the floor. We know that. One way or the other, all of the dinosaurs that have camped out in our house need to be removed. And the only way we're going to remove them is through term limits. No other way.
Yeah, it sounded like that was an issue for you that was overarching the rest of them. Like, you see that as solving some of the issues out here.
That is the only thing that is going to change this Congress. Look, you got people voting on whether to fire themselves or not. Well, yeah, I mean, your job. All these camera people that you can work for. If all of a sudden you had to take a vote on whether y'all were allowed to do your job, would you vote to fire yourself?
Of course not.
Same thing with Congress. They're not going to vote to fire themselves. This is something that the American people is going to have to put on there in order to change this Congress and the future Congress.
Fair enough.
Otherwise, it ain't going to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You said that you are a trucker as well, right?
Yes.
I'm currently running a live feed. I was just going to ask, do you view today as a success?
It depends on if they even look at the bills that we proposed. I think that they noticed that we're not going to sit down anymore. And hopefully us being here shows that we are just as important as they are.
Right. So what would have to happen to make today have been worth it, to make it a success?
Even just consideration of what we proposed. You know, there's a lot of different things in those pieces of paper that we proposed. And I think that even if a handful of them were registered and properly, we would be able to.
Hey, good to see you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for you. For putting this on. I asked Matt the same question. I'll ask you. Why did you
Okay, so with that, the meeting between the People's Convoy and 3 representatives has concluded. For YouTube compliance purposes, I'm going to say that you can go to CISA.gov/rumor control and CDC.gov/vaccines, and those are the countervailing views. So I said this for YouTube compliance. If this if the video stream on here gets taken down, or at least the YouTube version, I can point to me saying this, and that will provide compliance. But again, what happened here was that for the last hour or so, members of the convoy met with 3 representatives. My understanding is that earlier they met with 2 senators, including Senator Cruz, but here they met with Congresspeople, Gaetz, Greene, and Massie. And there were specific policy proposals, such as a ban on vaccine mandates, even including in private practices, or removal of liability from the manufacturers. So they had some specific proposals. The members of Congress who were speaking here sort of certainly took them seriously, but also described that they believe that it would be difficult to even get them to a House vote. So I spoke to some folks afterwards, or a person afterwards, specifically about what would it take to view this as a success, and he said, at least that these be considered by the Congress. So with that, I'm going to wrap the live stream here, but I will have an HD version of this entire event uncut up later today. Thank you for watching.